Good Saturday evening, everybody. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad to be here. I know lots going on in the world right at this moment, and people are going to want to tune in to the President's remarks in a half an hour. I will be as quick as I can, and you can come back and follow this if you have to step away. So I totally understand that. We've just had some big changes in what's going on in the world just recently. So, and I'm going to jump right in. I'm going to give a synopsis of some of the events recorded in John 18, because there's a portion of this chapter, a portion of what John had to say that I really want to focus on. And it's really things, even as they are today, things are happening in John's gospel. It's getting down to the whole crucial point of the trial, the judgment, the crucifixion, and why we are where we are today. So I want you to just kind of keep in the back of your mind that as we're talking about this, there's probably, think of it like three separate scenes of a player going on at the same time. And it all comes to a dramatic conclusion when the whole crowd gets together at the end of this story, or at the end of this story and the start of the next chapter. So just to kind of bring it all together, Jesus has finished his explanations, his warnings, and encouragement after the Last Supper. He spoke very clearly to the disciples, and we talked about this last week. And then he allowed them to listen in on his prayer, on his conversation with the Father. Now, if you think about all this, they've been going for a long time, and coming into Jerusalem and dealing with the crowds and Passover and all the preparations. They're probably just tired and worn out, and probably even emotionally spent. And I say all this to say, it would just make sense if everybody could just go sleep for a couple hours, but the night wasn't over. Jesus really understood that this was the precursor to what was about to take place. And we know that now because we look back on it as that he's a precursor to the cross. After Jesus prayed, it was time for them to leave the upper room. They were going to continue on the path. The start of John 18 says this: after Jesus had said these things, he went out with his disciples across the Kidron Valley, where there was a garden, and he and his disciples went into it. Judas, who had betrayed him, also knew the place, because Jesus often met there with his disciples. So Judas took a company of soldiers, and some officials from the chief priests and the Pharisees came with their lanterns, torches, and weapons. They were going to the Garden of Gethsemane. We know that. This was a familiar place. John is making the point that this is a familiar place to them. It's a place where they had stayed, where they had rested. Read Luke 21, and he talks about that. And just as a side note, just so you know that as much as we want to, there are some things that are just consistent. This was the same place that King David was betrayed by a close friend that had aligned himself with Absalom. This was the exact same place. This garden was the same place. So while it may have been a place of comfort and familiarity for the disciples, it was also a place of history too. Now, John doesn't go into the same details as in the other Gospels about the struggle that Jesus faced, the prayer in the garden and things like that. John really, his focus still is on the deity, on the glory of Jesus. All the other gospel writers, they focused on his humanity and everything that surrounded that. Neither way is wrong, but for us to be able to put it all together, it paints a complete picture for us to understand Jesus. So they go to the garden. Jesus is in prayer. The disciples are doing what they're struggling to stay awake, even though Jesus asked them to. And Judas shows up with a small army to capture Jesus. Now, please understand this. It didn't matter if Judas had shown up by himself or with 10,000 soldiers. And it didn't matter whether they were armed or not. Jesus chose to go with them. He wasn't surprised by what was taking place. Judas had chosen greed over the love of God, over a relationship with the Messiah. And ultimately that cost him everything. Remember what Jesus said when he was explaining who he was to the crowds. The Father loves me because I sacrifice my life so that I may take it back again. No one can take my life from me. I sacrifice it voluntarily, for I have the authority to lay it down when I want to and to take it up again. For this is what my Father has commanded. This was back when we were in John 10. This was back in all the events surrounding that, the festival and everything else. But really what the truth is, in every circumstance there is a choice. And Jesus made the choice to walk the path that God had commanded him, had determined for him. We have a choice today to do the same. Look at the interaction that was going on. Here, many of the disciples were struggling to stay awake. Jesus was agonizing in prayer. A small army with lit torches, armed, was approaching. It was likely 2 or 3 in the morning, so there were no crowds, there were no witnesses. This went against the Jewish law. It went against the rule of the day, where there was no arrest, no trials at night. And even when they showed up, Jesus stepped out and confronted them. He asked who they were looking for. He knew he was the only one that they were seeking. Evidently, this was difficult for the religious leaders, for the army to comprehend, because he had to clarify it again. I am the one you're seeking. And the power of this statement, the words that Jesus spoke, knocked the army to the ground. This declaration that I am he, I am the one, took everybody aback. But this didn't stop anything. And in fact, it put the disciples on guard. Peter even attacked one of the guards, and Jesus performed yet another miracle, not in the presence of anybody but the army and the disciples. He performed another miracle. In his willing submission, Jesus showed that he had the authority of God. This event, Jesus declaring to the soldiers who he was, and the soldiers falling down, is really a foreshadowing of what's going to happen at the second coming. What's going to take place when Jesus returns. Paul writes in Philippians chapter 2, he says this, so that every knee will bow to the name of Jesus, everyone in heaven, on earth, and under earth, and everyone will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord and bring glory to the Father. This thing of them falling to the ground was just a foreshadowing of that. So one scene is being said. Jesus has been arrested, but he went willingly. He goes before his accusers, and yet no one can dispute the truth that he had brought. Now, during this time, other things are playing out. The disciples were worried. Remember, Jesus had just warned them they would scatter, they would run to their homes, they would run for cover. And so they had to be worried and confused. All that they'd heard, and now this is coming to pass so fast. But some, at least a couple of the disciples, followed the Lord as he was being taken to the temple, taken in front of the priests and the high priest and everything else. Remember what Jesus had told them, but the time is coming, indeed is not here, when you will be scattered, each one going his own way, leaving me alone. Yet I'm not alone, because the Father is with me. We just talked about this last week. And this was just the beginning of the persecution and criticism that the disciples would endure. Jesus said it was going to be worse. Now, I need you to think back too, because this other scene is beginning to play out. We've got Jesus willingly being arrested, and he's being continued to be questioned and confronted by Annas and then by Caiaphas. And again, it's the middle of the night. It's going against Jewish law. It's going against Roman rule. You don't do trials at night. You don't do trials where there aren't accusers, where there aren't witnesses to the crime. But I need you to think back to what the disciples were facing, and think back to what Peter had said when Jesus told them that he was going away. Peter, back in John 13, said this, "Lord, where are you going?" Jesus answered him, "Where I am going, you cannot follow now, but you will follow later." Lord, Peter asked, "Why can't I follow you now? I will lay down my life for you." Jesus replied, "Will you lay down your life for me? Truly I tell you, a rooster will not crow until you've denied me 3 times. Peter would deny Jesus. He was following the arrest. He was following where Jesus was being taken, as was John. And during this time, Peter would be confronted 3 different times about, you were with him, you knew him. And Peter would deny Jesus. Now, Jesus was taken into custody about 3 a.m. Peter's denials would take place in just a few hours before sunrise. Up to this point, think about this from the disciples' perspective. Up to this point, Jesus had endured the persecution and the hatred for the grace that he revealed and the truth that he taught. Can you think about this for a moment and understand that there are times maybe that you've endured some kind of criticism or some kind of being minimized or put down because of the grace or the truth that you stood for, aligning yourself with God's principles, aligning yourself with who God is? Being criticized for your beliefs, and singled out for your faith is a painful process. And when it's out without reason, it makes it more difficult to understand and endure. Now, none of us is perfect. We all have flaws. And the world we live in is polluted with sin. But Jesus lived in the same world. He dealt with the pollution, but he was without flaws. And because the religious leaders, because the Pharisees, because the high priest couldn't get beyond their fears, their sin, their misunderstandings, their desire for control, their selfish behavior, they chose to find a way to eliminate their problem. Perhaps you've been under tremendous strain or criticism, but think about how Jesus handled this. He handled this with composure, with compassion, with grace. Can you handle the same? Can you show that grace and compassion while you're standing for the truth? Now, I've given you this synopsis because we've come to a conversation that I really want to focus on. And it's to me, it's a very powerful conversation, but it asks a question that we all have to answer for ourselves. So I'm going to read the remainder of chapter 18 to you, and then we'll talk about it for a moment. Picking up in verse 28, then they led Jesus from Caiaphas to the governor's headquarters. It was early morning. They did not enter the headquarters themselves, otherwise they would have been defiled and unable to eat Passover. So Jesus came out to them and he said, So Pilate came out to them and said, "What charge do you bring against this man?" They answered him, "If this man were a criminal, we wouldn't have handed him over to you." You see, there's no charges still. There's nothing they can accuse him of. Pilate told him, "You take him and judge him according to your law. It's not legal for us to put anyone to death," the Jews declared. They said this so that Jesus' words might be fulfilled, indicating what kind of death he was going to die. Then Pilate went back into the headquarters, summoned Jesus, and said to him, "Are you king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Are you asking this on your own, or have others told you about me?" "I'm not a Jew, am I?" Pilate replied. "Your own nation and the chief priests handed you over to me. What have you done?" "My kingdom is not of this world," Jesus said. "If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would fight so that I wouldn't be handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here." "You are a king then?" Pilate asked. "You say that I'm a king," Jesus replied. "I was born for this, and I have come to the world for this, to testify to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice." "What is truth?" said Pilate. The Jewish leaders, they violated all their rules and their man-made laws and still couldn't come up with anything to charge Jesus with, so they fabricated something. They made it up. The injustice is even becoming clearer, and Pilate recognizes this, but because of the lie, and because they're handing him over to the Romans for punishment, the injustice with Pilate continues. Pilate was this Roman governor. He was appointed governor of this area, and it was a political move, and he was embroiled in political practicality and both philosophical and moral relativism. He saw the term truth, or what he perceived as truth, as a tool of power or persuasion, not as something absolute. His question, the question of truth, it really reflected a jaded worldview where truth is negotiable, especially in matters of state. Does any of this sound familiar to you? Do you connect to any of this? There's a lot of irony that's just going to come out here. The persecution's begun. Jesus knew that the cross would be his destination. And this didn't affect him at all. It didn't affect his demeanor, his attitude. If you read Matthew 27 and Luke 23, they report that Jesus just remained calm and collected. He didn't answer the questions that he should have, and most of the time he didn't say a thing. When he answered questions, it was with purpose. This was causing Pilate a lot of conflict, and it made him even more manipulative. But ultimately, you think about this, because of his person and because of his wanting to be popular with the crowd, he couldn't do anything other than what the mob wanted. Pilate claimed he was searching for truth, but I think he was searching for a way to manipulate it for his benefit. The ironic thing is he had the truth standing right in front of him, and he couldn't see it. He chose not to. Pilate's question reflects a mindset that truth is elusive or subjective. And that's an attitude that's becoming increasingly common today. In this world, that's saturated with competitive ways to get attention and recognition, people often shrug and say, well, that's your truth. Like Pilate, many stand before the truth but dismiss it as unknowable or irrelevant to them. Pilate knew that Jesus was innocent, yet he washed his hands of the decision. And that's so similar to today. First he tried to pass it off. He tried to pass it off to Herod. He tried to pass it back to the high priest. He was avoiding dealing with truth. People today avoid dealing with the truth of God's love, with the truth that stands right in front of them, because it makes them uncomfortable. And so they're doing it for their own comfort and ease. The thought of their truth, that my life works for me, it's all about my ideas, my concepts, my wants, my desires, that's taken the place of what is genuinely true. Think about this. The information age has brought everything imaginable to our fingertips. Yet there is a struggle to discern what is genuine from what is false. Jesus said, he made it very clear, everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice. Not everyone listens to Jesus. He is the way, he is the truth, he is the pathway to life. It's a choice that Pilate couldn't make, to listen to, acknowledge him for who he was, and the truth was standing right in front of him. The thought today that truth is relative, and it's created many problems, but more than anything, it's opened a door for doubt. And that doubt hits everything. You're questioning absolutely everything. The denial of absolute truth really will ultimately result in the fact that life has no meaning or purpose. And this really is the predominant thought in the postmodern world today. So what? Doesn't matter what I do. It's, it's going to be forgotten. Doesn't matter what I say. It doesn't matter as long as it serves me in the moment. It was that way with the crowd. When the crowd cried out, and we'll talk about this more next week, when Pilate turned Jesus over to the crowd, he said, look, I can free somebody. We have this murderer here, or we have this man who I find no fault in. And the crowd cried, crucify him. It's recorded in Mark, it's recorded in Luke. But really what that crucify him was a shout for man's intolerance of truth, and especially of the truth of Jesus Christ. The crowd chose a murderer over the love of God. People have a problem with truth because it shatters their ideas and their ideals about themselves. Truth makes people look at things that they're not comfortable with and they don't know how to deal with. Let me make something clear to you. The truth of God, the truth of Jesus Christ, the truth of what he's done, the truth of the reason that he's standing on trial at this moment that we're looking at, is that we do have flaws, we do have faults, but we're loved completely and perfectly by the one who created it all. Even when we don't know how to accept it, when we struggle with the doubt and when we struggle with the thought of accepting it, the love is there. It's just waiting for us to receive it. His love is unconditional and eternal. Not only is God love, but he is faithful to who he is. So that never changes. His nature, his character, his love never changes. It will never go anywhere. I've covered a lot of ground here, and I'm going to bring it all together with kind of another question. See, the cross, the demonstration of God's love and grace, is just a couple hours away. Everything about the betrayal, the arrest, and the accusations of Jesus is man seeking to make himself more important than God. The irony of what John shares with us reveals how much of a struggle we face. Peter, who said he would lay down his life for Jesus, denied knowing Jesus when the pressure was on. Was that out of a lack of trust and understanding? Is that what you're facing today? Is that what I'm facing today? It's not much different today when confronted with having to stand with the truth. Stand for the truth. What are you going to do? The choice is yours where you're going to stand. Are you going to stand consistent to your faith? Or are you going to take the easy way out? The world has chosen to go to the way of Pontius Pilate. Everything is relative and everything is permissible. The path of grace is different. The love we are searching for, that love that's worth finding, means acknowledging the truth of who Jesus is and the truth that you have a need, and the only place that it can be met is at the foot of the cross. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, just in awe of what grace really is and how you continue to reveal it and show it to us. And you continue to pour it out on us even when we don't understand or we make a poor choice. Father, I am so thankful for your faithful love, for your compassion, and for your grace. May we continue to see what it is to stand for the truth and to be able to do that with grace and understanding. Father, for the needs that are out there, for our family that's hurting, for surgeries that are about to happen or have happened, may your healing touch, may your presence be real. Father, protect our family, guide and keep us till we can come together again. And for this, we'll just be forever grateful. Family, it is about His grace. His grace first and His grace always, and we get to live that. I'm praying for us. I'm praying for all of you and for our country. Have a wonderful evening. We'll see you on Tuesday as we gather together for our home Bible study. Love you all. Have a good night.